Hello everyone, and welcome to another Mafia Godfathers video. In this video I'm going to show you how to make 1,650,000 credits every hour on Gran Turismo 7. So if there's a car you've been saving up for, or if you just want to get a bunch of credits in case a car ends up over here in the legend cars that you're looking for, or whatever, this is, to my knowledge, the easiest way to build up credits in this game. So you're going to come over here to World Circuits. And from here, you're going to go to Europe. And we're going to go up to 24 Hours Du Mans Racetrack, which is Circuit de la Sarthe. You're going to come over here to this World Touring Car 700 race. So this is a 30-minute race, as you can see up here. And the maximum performance points that you can have for this race is 700. So that comes out to a GR4 car, a grade 4 car. And as you can see up here, I have the Mustang grade 4 car. And I'm going to be using that in this race. But you can use any GR4 car or something equivalent that is under 700 performance points for this race. So what you're basically going to do is grind this race. The best thing to do is to have your car with racing hard tires. They're going to last longer. You can do racing soft or racing medium, but they're not going to last as long. You'll probably have to pit more often. Ideally, if you do this race right, you should only have to pit once, maybe twice. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to do the entire race for you, so you can watch it if you want. You don't have to, but I am going to show you the whole race and show you what I do to complete this race every time and win and get 825,000 credits for each win. So, you want to have racing hard tires. You also want to have intermediate and heavy wet tires for this race, just in case, because 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that, it is going to rain during this race. So you're going to have to pit and change tires at some point, or risk sliding everywhere. So we're going to have racing hard tires, and you want to have a GR4 car. I happen to have the Mustang, but there are several of them on here. If you don't have one, each GR4 car at Brand Central is 350,000 credits each. So make sure you get one of those, or get a car that can get up to just under 700 performance points for this race. I'm going to enter. And you can see there, we have a 30-minute race coming up. And I know it does say 500,000 credits for first place, but if you have a clean race and you don't hit any walls, hit any other cars, you will get a 50% bonus on your winnings, which would bring you up to 825,000. So 550,000, excuse me, for the winner, as you can see over there. And if you were to add 50% to that, that would come out to 825,000. All right, so we got a rolling start here. I'm going to press start. And for some reason, the hood view is my favorite on this track, so that's what I'll be racing in. But I will show you how to do this race. So you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the video, or you can skip ahead if you like. Ideally, you want to get ahead of as many of these cars as possible in the first lap. You're going to start near the back of the pack every time you do this race. So just make sure you're staying near the racing line, braking when you need to brake. Try not to go off the track because penalties are turned on this track. So if you go outside of the track limit, too far in, too far out, you will get a penalty of some kind. Also, try to be very careful and vigilant about hitting any walls or other cars. They're pretty lenient on this race because it's so long. I think they give you like 3 or 4 hits before they will consider it to not be a clean race. So, as I have had a couple of crashes in some of my races that I've done on here, and I've still gotten a clean race. So I think they're a little lenient, but you still want to try your best not to hit any other cars or any walls of any kind. Now we're coming down to the chicanes. Make sure you brake. Come through the chicane, get back on the gas, try not to go over that white line all the way. And now we're back onto the second of 3 straightaways. on this very long part of the track. Now, the way that you do this race without having to pit very often is by adjusting your fuel level down here at the right bottom side of your screen. So to get over to that, you want to press the right or left directional buttons until you get to that little icon down there. That tells you how much fuel you have remaining before you're out of gas, and how many laps you can do before you run out of gas. So generally, for the entire first lap of the race, I will do it on full power, which is number 1. And then after I get into first place, I'll put it up to number 6 and make it as lean as possible. Then you do the rest of the race on number 6. And that will give you enough gas. If you only pit once, it'll give you enough gas for the entire race. Coming up here on the Suzuki Swift Sport, Blazon, pass him. And 2 more guys up here that are going side by side. Be careful with these 2. I don't want to hit them, so I'm going to wait to pass them until I get on the straightaway beyond this corner up here. And you're going to notice just beyond this corner these little yellow things on either side of the track with the arrows in them right here. If you were to take a penalty, that's where it would force you to slow down. You might lose some time, you might get passed depending on the severity of your penalty. Alright, now we're past everybody, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my gas up to lean all the way to number 6 for the remainder of this lap. Now, if you want to go for a best lap time, it's best to do it either on the second lap or on the last lap of the race. You could, especially with this car, you could go a full lap with full power and still have enough gas to do another lap when you're on fully lean power. So, or gas consumption, I should say. But just to give myself a little bit of extra gas for the next lap, I put it all the way up to lean. And coming up to the last little chicanes here. And I should say, you should expect rain to come around the 3rd lap whenever you're doing this. In total, you should complete 7 laps by the end of the race. The time, the 30 minutes, will probably expire halfway through your 7th lap. So then whenever you cross the finish line, the race will be over at that point. So it takes roughly 31.5 minutes or so to complete this race. So on lap 2 now, and I did not take my car off of lean gas. Sometimes I do, if I feel like it. If I feel like trying for a new lap record or something, I'll keep it on full power for a lap and do that, and then I usually still have enough gas left over if I put it all the way up on the lean for the 3rd lap. But it will typically start raining by the 3rd lap. If you want to see where the rain is, again, in the bottom right-hand side, you're going to scroll over to the weather radar, and then press down until that little slider is all the way down at the minus sign, and that will give you a very broad view of the weather radar. Now, typically, towards the end of the 2nd lap, beginning of the 3rd lap is when you're going to start seeing some rain creep in. Now, it doesn't always rain during this race, but I'd say 95% of the time it does. And sometimes it's very heavy rain, and it rains for the remainder of the race. Sometimes it's a very brief, small rain shower that comes through, and it's only for a lap or 2. But either way, you definitely want to be prepared with having intermediate or heavy wet tires, so that if rain does come, you can switch those tires and not risk sliding around the racetrack with your racing hard tires. So we'll just keep an eye on that weather radar down there as we continue on this straightaway. You want to make sure you slow down pretty early for those tighter turns on here. I guess something else I could talk about while we're doing this race is the different types of cars that you can use. So I mentioned having GR4 or Grade 4 cars. The Mustang is my favorite one to use, which is the one that I'm driving right now. But pretty large majority of the manufacturers that are on this game have a GR4 car at Brand Central. So if you want to make it fun for yourself, you can, after each race, you get 825,000 credits. You can go and buy another GR4 car and see how it does compared to other ones that you have, and go with that. Now, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you see some rain starting to creep in, and it looks pretty heavy. The light blue is the lightest stuff, but if you see some of that purple and green, that's when you want to consider pitting. So I probably am not going to be able to make it through another whole lap with these tires on, with how heavy that rain looks. If it was all light blue, I would probably go for another lap. But because I'm seeing those purples and greens in there, I am going to pit now and get some intermediate tires on. The only time you really need heavy wet is if it's really heavy rain throughout most of the race, and that's not looking to be the case here. Looks like it's going to be an off and on kind of rain for heaviness, and so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, I'm going to pit, come down here to pit, and it takes, I believe, exactly 31.5 seconds for the car to reach the pit. So you're going to be sitting here for a minute, so you want to look at the tires here and select your tires. I'm going to go with Racing Intermediate. So Racing Intermediate tires are good for light rain and both dry and wet tracks. The racing wets, you really only want to have those on when the track is completely soaked, because if you have those on when it's dry, the tread on the tires will go away really quickly, and you don't want that. And you also slide around the course a little bit. So you also want to let your gas fill up whenever you come into pit. That little diamond at the top of the F shows you how much gas you need to have to be able to complete the race, and it's telling me I need to have a full tank to do it. And it is raining pretty hard out here right now. So they're going to have to go a little bit slower around these corners. The intermediate tires do help, but you can still have the ability to spin out, or the misfortune of spinning out, if you go too fast around them and the track is too wet. So make sure you are careful. Remember, you want to have a clean race. You don't want to hit any walls or anything like that. So make sure you're taking your time. Looks like these cars didn't pit, so they're going to have a heck of a time getting around the track. As you can see, they're going slow because they have racing hard tires on. And there's just a big blob of rain on that radar, so I'm glad that I switched to intermediate tires for this lap. So you'll want to stay on intermediate tires until the rain is gone and the track starts to dry up a little bit. So I'm actually sliding a little bit here, braking from how much rain has already fallen. But anyway, when the track starts to dry out a little bit, you're going to notice down in the bottom left-hand corner where you see the IM, those 4 white lines around the little overhead view of the car are your tires. And that will start turning red as you use the tires more and more. On a dry track, if you have intermediate or heavy wet tires, that redness is going to start filling in really quickly because you're using tires that really shouldn't be used for those conditions. Intermediate tires are great when the track is wet When it starts drying out, the tread, the tires are just going to go away really fast. So whenever it dries up, you want to pit again and switch back to racing hard tires. Now, there is a chance that this rain is going to go for the rest of the race. And if that is the case, you may be able to just complete this race on the intermediate tires and not have to pit again whatsoever. But you want to keep an eye on that radar and make sure that the rain stops or doesn't stop, see what happens. Because if it does stop, then you're probably going to want to pit again and switch back to racing hard tires. So I'm starting to see the rain. It looks like there's an opening towards the left down there on the radar, so it might be ending. Usually what will happen is it'll rain for a lap or two and then it'll stop. But the severity of the rain differs in just about every time you do this race, so it's not always the same. Sometimes it's very light, sometimes it's very heavy. There really isn't any rhyme or reason to it, but I've done this race where it's rained for the entire race too, so it'll start at the end of lap 2 and it'll just rain for the rest of the race. So it's always different, which makes it interesting. And anyway, back to what I was saying earlier about the different cars that you can use on this track. You want to have either a GR4 car or something that's equivalent to it as far as performance points go. So you can't be over 700 performance points. But if you have a regular car that's around 680 or whatever, then you can go ahead and use that and see how it compares to the rest of these GR4 cars that are in this race, all the computer cars. So you can use just about any car you want as long as it's under 700 performance points in this race, but I prefer the GR4 cars because they perform very well on this particular race and on this track, and they're relatively easy to control. So I'm seeing that the rain is continuing on to the south and west, so I'm going to go another lap with the intermediate tires on. Actually, if I go into this view, you'll see that the wiper blades are going crazy. So, still raining. And also, I want you to keep in mind that I have not changed the fuel map at all since the first lap. I've kept it at fully lean, number 6. So I'm not using very much gas. I'm on my second lap with this tank of gas and I've only used a quarter tank. Whereas when I was using full power on the fuel map in the first lap, I had used almost a half a tank. So you can do about 4 laps on one tank of gas if you have it on all the way lean on the fuel map. I have 71% fuel left right now. And we're about halfway through the race, just past the 15-minute mark, just under 15 minutes remaining. Again, like I said, you should be able to complete about 7 laps of this race before it ends. And another thing I wanted to mention, I've driven probably 10 or 12 of the GR4 cars on this track that are on this game, and I can tell you the ones that are good and the ones that aren't so good. The best one I've driven so far, because I still have a lot to go through, but the best one I've driven so far is easily the Chevrolet Corvette. The Corvette C7 GR4 car is the best one I've driven. It has the most power and it doesn't use a ton of gas. So if you do it the way I'm doing it, you should be good for most of the race. And the other car that was really good that I tried was the Aston Martin GR4 car. That also, well, actually, my fastest lap between the Corvette and the Aston Martin was only about 2 seconds apart. It was about 4:07 for the Aston Martin, 4:05 4 minutes and 5 seconds for the Corvette. So those two cars are good. The Mustang is probably the most, how do I say this? The Mustang is the most consistent of the GR4 cars that I've driven. It's the easiest to handle. It doesn't have as much power as the Corvette does, so it brakes well, it handles well. It's probably the easiest of the GR4 cars that I've driven so far to drive. The worst one that I have driven so far is easily the McLaren. McLaren's GR4 car is it's not very difficult to drive, but it uses a ton of gas. I used more than a half a tank on my first lap on here. And when you're using that much gas on one lap, it's hard to do this race without having to pit 2 or 3 times. So I would stay away from the McLaren GR4 on this particular race. And you can see I'm starting to slide around a little bit, and I was talking earlier about how when the track dries up, the intermediate tires are not good. If you look back down to the bottom left again, you can see that my tires are worn about halfway down. But there is more rain coming, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. We're in a little bit of a lull right now, but there's more rain on its way. Like I said, it changes every time. It might rain a lot, it might rain just a little bit. This time it looks like it's going to rain a lot. So because my tires are pretty worn and I have a minute lead on second place, I'm going to pit again here on lap 4, and I'm going to put intermediate tires on again because there is more rain coming. So I'm just going to switch out the intermediate tires that I have on. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that you should be able to do this race only pitting once, maybe twice. There's a chance I'm going to have to pit 3 times in this video because of the way the weather is. So I'm having to pit now to change tires back to intermediates, and if the rain stops in the next lap or 2, I'm probably going to have to pit again to put racing hards back on. So really, you can get the gas down to the point that you don't have to pit super often. The tires are a different story. If it doesn't rain very much throughout this race, then you should be able to only have to pit once or twice. I've done this race pitting only once before. That's when it doesn't rain very much at all, that you're able to do that. But if it does rain, typically you only have to pit twice. You pit once towards the beginning of the race to get gas and change to intermediate tires, and then you pit again after the rain ends to get gas again and to change tires back to racing hards. So, but there's a good chance that I'm going to end up pitting a 3rd time in this race, but we'll just see how the weather goes. Definitely want to make sure that you're out ahead of the competition during most of the race. Pretty much everybody else except for second place has pitted, so that's going to help me too. Back on this straightaway here. So doing this race several times, you know, it's a half hour, so it does take time to do this, but it's worth it. I mean, you get 825,000 credits every time you do it. After you've done all of the circuit experiences and you don't really have any other way to make an easy $1 million every now and then, well, here's your next method. Go and do this race over and over again. Try it with different cars. Make it interesting for yourself. Just keep doing it over and over. Get 825,000 credits every time as long as you have a clean race. And if you do it twice in a row, well, then you're looking at 1.65 million in just over an hour's time. So it can definitely help you build up money. And if you do it a couple times a day for a week, then you're looking at probably close to $10 million at the end of the week. So if you're looking to complete the 3 Legendary Cars trophy, where you need to have, I believe it's the Ford Mark IV, the Jaguar X, I'm going to forget the name of it, XJ12, I think, and I think it's the Ferrari P4. If you're looking to complete that trophy, all three of those cars are in the Legendary Cars dealer, and they are all super expensive usually. I think the cheapest they go is about 6 million, maybe 5 million, but sometimes they're as high as 20 million because that market fluctuates. So you may have to do this race several times to get that kind of money to buy those cars and complete that trophy. Or if there's just a car at Grand Central or another legendary car that you want that's costs a lot and you don't have the money for it, well, do this race a few times and that's going to help you out. Alright, so if you look down at the bottom right hand corner of the screen again, you can see that the rain is moving out. We're now in the clear, and it doesn't look like any more rain is coming behind that. So, like I said earlier, I might be pitting again. Now the track is still wet, so I might give it one more lap before I pit. I'm probably going to eat up my tires, but I am only 44 seconds ahead of second place. And it takes roughly 50 seconds to pit on this track. So I think I'm going to go one more lap, and then I'll probably pit before my 7th lap. So by the time I hit the finish line here, which is going to be in the next 10 to 15 seconds, I'm probably going to be down to about 6 minutes and 15 or 10 seconds left. Might actually be a little more than that. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, it takes almost 5 minutes to do this track when you have your fuel map on lean. So by the time I get back to the starting line again, I'm still going to have a little over a minute left. So I'm going to have to do a 7th lap at that point. So do this lap, and I'm going to pit, put racing hards on for the final lap. Do that, and then we should be far enough in the lead at that point that we can win the race easily. Sometimes in this race when I'm doing it, if it doesn't rain a lot and I only have to pit once, I can actually catch up to last place and lap them, which is always fun because it's a pretty long track. So being able to lap last place is pretty crazy whenever you do 6 or 7 laps of this. Sliding a little bit because I still have intermediate tires on and it's not raining anymore, so the track is drying out. By the time I get back to pitting, you're probably going to see those red lines on my tires down in the bottom left hand corner of the screen, pretty red because I'm going to be making some sharp turns here, hitting the brakes really hard, and they're just going to start going away. We got blue skies. And I am ahead of my best lap by a minute or a second and a half. Couldn't really do much with this race because it rains so much, but on races where it doesn't rain a whole lot, you might have a couple of laps where you get a chance to put your car on full power and try for a lap record. But couldn't do that this time with the weather. see on the left side, I actually don't even have the fastest lap because I had to pit twice. And my laps where I didn't pit, it was pretty rainy, so Portilla is the fastest lap right now, and he's probably going to remain the fastest lap because I'm going to pit at the end of this lap. And that's going to mean that I'm going to have an out lap for my last lap, or 7th lap. So I'm not even going to get the fastest lap here. Typically I do, and it'll be somewhere around between 4 minutes and 7 seconds and 4 minutes and 15 seconds. It's usually somewhere between there for any of the GR4 cars. So now we're down to having 2 minutes and 50 seconds left in this race. And I am going to have to do a 7th lap. That's typically the way it goes. 7 laps to complete this race. That means it's probably going to end up taking roughly 33 minutes for this. If it doesn't rain a whole lot, it's usually around 31 and a half, maybe 32 minutes. Now, like I said, you can see the redness in the tires at the bottom left-hand side of the corner. Side of the screen, sorry. In the bottom corner, bottom left corner. They're pretty red, so that tells you that you're using the wrong tires. Go change your tires, because I'm using intermediates on a dry track, and that's not going to work out super well. So I'm going to switch back to racing hards, and I'm going to let them fill my tank, even though I don't really need it. I could definitely do the last lap with the amount of gas that I have, if I left it on lean, and even if I put it on full power, I should still be able to finish the race. But we're waiting for my car to arrive. It's usually around 31, 32 seconds. There it is. Guys, taking my tires off, putting new ones on, and now fill my gas tank. And there's going to be almost exactly a minute remaining in the race when I get out of here. Alright. So now back on the track with racing hard tires. It is going to be a tiny bit different when you go between intermediates and racing hards. Racing hards are going to grip the track a little more, especially when it's dry, so you should be able to get tighter turns, keep more speed through your turns. Now, just because it's the last lap, I am going to put my fuel map all the way down to 1 and let the car go as fast as it wants. Alright, so we've just hit 0 minutes, 0 seconds. This is now the final lap. So whoever is now crossing the finish line, any of the computers that are just crossing the finish line, as you can see there on the left, Haywood crossed the finish line. He is done. Everybody else seems to be pitting. So anybody that crosses the finish line after the time runs out, they are done with the race. Their position is locked. Now, because I am in first place and they were behind me, it doesn't matter, even though I'm still on the course. I'm going to finish in first at this point, because just about everybody else has finished. We'll see about Gallo. Oh my. So here is the problem with having hard versus intermediate tires on. The edges of the track are still wet from the rain, so you have to stay away from the edge of the track until it's dried out. Now that may have just cost me a clean race, but we'll see. You can see the back end of my car is flashing red at the bottom of the left of the screen because I just completely rammed that wall. That'll fix itself. There it goes. So that was actually making me turn a little bit to the right because of the damage. And I went off the track a little bit there too. So you got to be careful whenever you switch from intermediate back to hard. You can actually see it a little bit on the sides of the track where there's still a little bit of water out there, and that will make it very slippery for any kind of racing tires, whether they be hard, soft, or medium. So ideally you want to stay as close to the racing line as you can. Don't veer too far off of it, or you're going to risk spinning out like I did. All right. Last lap. We've got probably about a minute to go. So total race time is at about 32 minutes and 30 seconds right now. So it's probably going to end up being somewhere around 33.5 minutes total. And the car does not want to turn on the wetness on the side of the track. Alright, a couple more turns, and then we'll be done with the race. And here comes the finish line. So there you have it. That's how to do the Circuit de la Sarthe 24 Hours Du Mans race, the 30-minute endurance race. And so I finished in first. Everybody else was at least a lap behind me. Some of them may have been even further than that. Nope, everybody was exactly a lap. Alright, now come over here. We'll see that I won. And the prize money is $825,000. So even though I had that little crash in there where I hit the wall, they still considered it to be a clean race. And you see clean race bonus rates right there. Prize money plus 50%. So it's 550,000 credits. Plus 50% gives you 825,000 credits. And also, if you do this race even just once a day, you're going to clear your driving marathon because it's 58.3 miles of driving. So you're going to get that every single time. I got a 5-star roulette ticket today, so I'll see what that is in a moment. But that's how you do this race. And now we'll go. There's the replay. Exit out of that. And now if you want to do that race again, you can either just click retry, or you can exit and choose a different vehicle. Do it again. Do it twice in about an hour and 10 minutes. And you're going to have yourself 1,650,000 credits. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this helped you to see how to make more credits on Gran Turismo 7, how to save up for some of the cars that you've been wanting. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate your support as always, and we'll see you next time.